The handcuffs clicked shut, echoing louder than the sirens, wailing in the humid, a southern state air. Deputy Cole Mercer thought he had just caught a career criminal, a black man driving a luxury sport utility vehicle through Cedar Ridge County with a smart mouth. He didn't know that the man in his back seat wasn't a drug dealer. He was Lieutenant General Darius Holloway, a three-star general who oversaw logistics for half the eastern seaboard. Mercer smirked as he tossed the general's phone onto the dashboard, unaware that a single missed protocol was about to trigger a call to the Pentagon that would dismantle his entire department. Karma wasn't coming. It was already here. The height of summer heat in Cedar Ridge County, a southern state, was a physical weight pressing down on the asphalt until it shimmered in a mirage of oil and humidity. It was the kind of heat that made tempers short and patience shorter. For Lieutenant General Darius Holloway, however, the heat was nothing. He had endured the scorching sands of Kuwait, the humid jungles of the Pacific during joint training exercises, and the stifling pressure of the Pentagon briefing rooms. This casual drive in his civilian silver Mercedes G-Wagon along State Route 27 was supposed to be his decompression. Darius was a man of precise habits. At 58, his hair was graying at the temples, cropped close in a high and tight that hadn't changed since he was a cadet at a respected military academy. He wore a crisp navy blue polo shirt and khaki slacks. There were no medals on his chest that day, no stars on his shoulders, just the quiet confidence of a man who commanded 40,000 troops and managed a budget larger than the gross domestic product of some small nations. He was on his way to Fort Adams to surprise his son, Travis, who was graduating from airborne school soon afterward. He checked his speedometer, 54 miles per hour in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. Darius didn't break laws. He enforced them. A few miles back, sitting in the shadow of a sprawling oak tree near the old Briar Creek Bridge, Deputy Sheriff Cole Mercer sat in his cruiser, sweating through his uniform. Cole was 32, with a face that looked like it had been clenched in a permanent scowl since high school. He was the kind of cop locals warned visitors about, the kind who saw the badge not as a shield, but as a hunting license. Cole was bored. The quota for the month was low, and Sheriff Vernon Pike had been riding him about ticket revenues. He took a sip of lukewarm Mountain Dew and squinted at the radar gun. Then the silver G-Wagon glided past. Cole sat up straight. A car like that didn't belong here, not in Cedar Ridge. That was a six-figure vehicle. And as it passed, Cole caught a glimpse of the driver. Well, well, Cole muttered to himself, dropping the car into gear. What do we have here? He didn't see a decorated military officer. He didn't see a father proud of his son. He saw a black man in a car that cost more than Cole would make in several years. In Cole's narrow, prejudiced worldview, that equation only had one solution: narcotics. He peeled out onto the highway, gravel spraying behind his tires. He didn't turn his lights on immediately. He wanted to tail him. He wanted to see the driver sweat. He pulled up close to the Mercedes bumper, dangerously close, aggressively filling the rearview mirror with the grill of his Dodge Charger. Inside the Mercedes, Darius glanced at the mirror. He saw the aggressive posture of the cruiser. His combat instincts, honed over 3 decades of service, didn't flare with fear, but with tactical awareness. Tailgating intimidation tactic, he thought calmly. Maintain speed. Maintain lane position. Darius tapped the brakes gently, just enough to light the lamps, signaling the officer to back off. That was all Cole needed. Brake-checking an officer, Cole grinned, flipping the switch. The red and blue lights exploded into life, piercing the heavy summer haze. The siren chirped once, a sound of authority demanding submission. Darius sighed, a long, weary exhalation. He signaled right, slowed down gradually, and pulled onto the narrow gravel shoulder, ensuring he was far enough off the road for safety. He put the car in park, rolled down all 4 windows. a standard procedure to put an officer at ease, and placed his large hands on the steering wheel, at the upper part of the steering wheel. He waited. He watched in the side mirror as Deputy Cole Mercer exited the cruiser. The deputy didn't walk. He swaggered. His hand was already hovering near his holster, the thumb brake undone. He wasn't approaching a traffic stop. He was approaching a raid. Cole didn't come to the window immediately. He stopped at the rear tail light, touching it with his thumb, an old superstition to leave a fingerprint, and then leaned down, peering into the back seat through the tinted glass. He walked slowly, trying to unsettle the driver. When Cole finally reached the window, he didn't say hello. He didn't ask for license and registration. "Whose car is this, boy?" Cole asked, his voice dripping with a faux casual, southern drawl that barely masked the venom underneath. Darius turned his head slowly. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and utterly unimpressed. He had been addressed by senators, warlords, and presidents. A deputy sheriff with a dip of tobacco in his lip wasn't going to rattle him. "This vehicle belongs to me, officer," Darius said, his voice a deep baritone, calm and level. "Is there a reason for the stop?" "I asked you a question," Cole snapped, leaning closer, his hand resting on the door frame. "And the way I see it, a car like this, it don't fit the profile. You got any receipts for this ride?" "The registration is in the glove box. My identification is in my pocket. I am reaching for it now," Darius stated, telegraphing his movements. "Don't you move," Cole barked, his hand dropping to his gun. "I didn't tell you to move." Darius froze. He recognized the tone. It was the tone of a man who had lost control of the situation because he never had control of himself. This was dangerous. "Officer," Darius said, "I am a lieutenant general in the United States Army. I am reaching for my military identification card. I suggest you lower your voice and state the infraction." Cole laughed. It was a dry, cracking sound. "A general? You look more like a runner for the major southern city boys. Get out of the car." "I am not getting out of the vehicle for a traffic violation," Darius said firmly. "That is not standard procedure. I decide what the procedure is," Cole shouted. He ripped the door open. "Get out now." Darius looked at the deputy. He saw the sweat on Cole's upper lip, the dilated pupils, the vein throbbing in his neck. I knew that any sudden movement would give this man the excuse he was desperate for. Slowly, Darius unbuckled his seatbelt. He stepped out of the air-conditioned sanctuary of the Mercedes into the stifling heat. He stood a full head taller than Deputy Cole Mercer. Darius was 6 feet 3 inches, built like a linebacker who had kept his form. Cole had to look up, and that only made him angrier. "Turn around, hands on the hood," Cole commanded. "Am I under arrest?" Darius asked. "You're being detained for suspicion of grand theft auto and resisting a lawful order," Cole spat. "Now, turn around before I make you turn around." Darius turned. He placed his hands on the hot metal of his own car. He felt the rough hands of the deputy patting him down harder than necessary, checking his pockets, slapping his inner thighs. Cole pulled out Darius's wallet. He didn't look at the identification card inside. He just threw it on the hood. "You got drugs in the car?" Cole asked, moving to rummage in the driver's door. "I do not consent to a search," Darius said over his shoulder. Cole paused. He looked back at Darius with a look of pure malice. "I smell marijuana," Cole lied smoothly. "That gives me probable cause. Stand there and shut up." Darius closed his eyes for a brief second. He thought of the phone in his pocket. He needed to make a call, but before he could move, he felt the cold steel of handcuffs slap onto his right wrist. "You're twitchy," Cole said, wrenching Darius's arm behind his back. "I don't like twitchy." The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut sent a shockwave through Darius's system. It was a violation of dignity that burned hotter than the southern state sun. He was a man who had sworn an oath to the Constitution, a man who had led battalions into the jaws of death. And here he was, being shackled like a common criminal by a man who likely couldn't pass the Army's basic aptitude test. "Officer," Darius said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly quiet. "You are making a mistake. A very expensive mistake. I advise you to look at the identification you just threw on the hood." "I don't need to look at fake identification cards," Cole grunted, shoving Darius toward the cruiser. "You can tell your story to the judge on Monday. Until then, you're a guest of the county." "Monday?" Darius stiffened, planting his feet. "This is Friday afternoon. You intend to hold me without charge for the weekend?" "Resisting arrest is a charge," Cole said, shoving Darius again. Darius didn't stumble, but he allowed himself to be moved. Fighting physically would be a death sentence. He knew the statistics. He knew how this story ended if he resisted. He had to fight this with the weight of the institution he served. Cole opened the back door of the Charger and pushed Darius's head down roughly, too roughly. Darius's temple grazed the door frame, a sharp sting of pain. "Watch the head," Darius snapped. "Watch your mouth," Cole retorted, slamming the door shut. The back of the cruiser smelled of stale vomit and industrial disinfectant. The partition was a cage of wire mesh. Darius sat awkwardly, his hands numb behind his back. He watched through the window as Cole walked back to the Mercedes. The deputy didn't just search the car, he ransacked it. Darius watched with a simmering rage as Cole tossed his duffel bag onto the asphalt. His dress uniform, carefully packed in a garment bag for the graduation ceremony, was thrown onto the dusty shoulder. Cole opened the glove box, scattering papers. He was looking for a gun or a brick of cocaine, anything to justify the stop. Finding nothing in the front, Cole moved to the trunk. He pulled out a locked hard case. "Open the trunk!" Cole yelled through the glass, realizing he couldn't hear Darius. He stomped back to the cruiser and opened the driver's door, leaning in. "What's in the case? Guns?" "That is government property," Darius said. "It contains classified logistical data on an encrypted drive. You do not have the clearance to touch it, let alone open it." Cole's eyes lit up. "Classified, huh? Sounds like trafficking to me." "If you attempt to force that case open," Darius said, locking eyes with the deputy in the rearview mirror, "you will be violating the National Security Act. Do not touch it." Cole sneered. "I'm the law here, General. I can touch whatever I want." Cole went back to the Mercedes. He took his baton and smashed the lock on the hard case. Darius flinched, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. The case contained sensitive troop movement schedules for the Eastern Seaboard. It was encrypted, yes, but the physical tampering was a federal felony. Cole pulled out a laptop and a stack of files stamped top secret. He flipped through them, clearly not understanding a word of the logistics jargon, then tossed them onto the passenger seat of his cruiser, like they were old newspapers. Then Cole found the phone. Darius's personal cell phone was in the center console. Cole picked it up. "Let's see who you're calling," Cole muttered. He saw the background photo. Darius, shaking hands with the President of the United States. For a second, Cole paused. The photo looked real. The President looked familiar. But cognitive dissonance is a powerful drug. Cole convinced himself it was photoshopped. "These guys fake everything," he thought. "Fake identification cards, fake photos, fake lives." He walked back to the cruiser, tossing the phone onto his dashboard, just out of Darius's reach. "You have one phone call when we get to the station," Cole said, putting the car in gear. "If the phones are working." "I need my phone now," Darius said. "I am required to report my status to my command." "You're not in command of nothing right now," Cole said, peeling out onto the road. He left the Mercedes on the side of the road, doors wide open, trunk gaping, hazards off. You're leaving my vehicle unsecured, Darius demanded. There is sensitive government property in there. Tow truck's coming, Cole said dismissively. If it's still there when they get there. As the cruiser sped toward the county jail, Darius closed his eyes and began to breathe rhythmically, box breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. He needed to lower his heart rate. He needed to think. He was in a dead zone. The local sheriff, a man named Vernon Pike, ran this county like a thief. Darius knew the type. If he went into that jail, he would be processed, stripped, and thrown in a cell. He would miss his son's graduation. But worse, the data on his laptop was now compromised by a chain of custody violation. He looked at the dashboard. His phone was sliding around as Cole took the curves too fast. It wasn't locked. "Deputy Mercer," Darius said, "I want you to listen to me very carefully. My name is Lieutenant General Darius Holloway. I report directly to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. If you bring me to that jail, you will trigger a series of events that you cannot stop. I am giving you one chance to pull over, check my identification card properly, and let us resolve this." Cole laughed. "You guys always have a story. I know the mayor, I know the judge. You know the Joint Chiefs?" Darius said. "Sure, and I'm having dinner with Elvis tonight." "This is your last warning," Darius said. Cole turned up the radio. Country music blasted, drowning out the general's voice. After a tense drive, they arrived at the Cedar Ridge County Sheriff's Department. It was a squat brick building with barred windows. Cole dragged Darius out of the car, parading him past 2 other deputies who were smoking outside. "Look what I caught," Cole bragged. "Says he's a general driving a G-Wagon. Probably stole it from a rapper in a major southern city." The other deputies laughed. "A general? Did he salute you, Cole?" "He's going to learn to salute," Cole said, shoving Darius through the heavy steel doors. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of stale coffee. The booking sergeant, an older woman named Mabel, with tired eyes, looked up. She saw Darius, dignified, standing tall despite the handcuffs, his eyes scanning the room with tactical precision. She saw the quality of his clothes, she saw the way he held himself, and she saw something Cole didn't. The A-respected military academy ring on Darius's finger. "Cole," Mabel said, her voice hesitant. "What do you have here?" "Grand theft, resisting, suspicion of trafficking," Cole rattled off. "Book him." "Name?" Mabel asked Darius. "Lieutenant General Darius Holloway," Darius said clearly. "Service number 04492. Bravo. I am demanding my right to contact the Department of Defense immediately." Mabel typed the name into the computer. Her eyes went wide. The screen flashed a red banner. "D.O. DVIP level 5 clearance. Do not detain." "Cole," Mabel whispered, her face draining of color. "Come look at this." "I don't need to look at it. Just print the mugshot," Cole said, unhooking his belt. "Cole," Mabel hissed. "The computer says he's real. It says he's—" "Oh my God." Cole frowned. He walked around the desk and looked at the screen. He saw the file photo. It was the man standing in front of him, but in a dress uniform with 3 stars on each shoulder and a chest full of ribbons. Cole's stomach dropped, but his pride was a heavy anchor. "Computer glitch," Cole muttered. "Hackers. They can hack anything these days." "I want my phone," Darius said. "Now." Cole looked at Darius. He looked at the computer. He had 2 choices: apologize and pray for mercy, or double down and hope he could find something, anything, to make the charges stick. Cole doubled down. "Put him in the holding cell," Cole ordered. "I'm going to search that laptop. If he's a general, why does he have encrypted files he don't want me to see?" "Cole, you can't touch that laptop," Mabel cried. "Watch me." Cole grabbed the laptop bag he'd brought in and stormed off toward the back office. Darius turned to Mabel. "Ma'am," Darius said, You seem like a sensible woman. Give me a phone. If he breaks the encryption on that hard drive, federal agents will be here within the hour, and they won't be knocking." Mabel looked at the angry deputy disappearing down the hall, then at the general. She reached under the desk, pulled out the desk phone, and slid it across the counter. "Make it quick," she whispered. Darius picked up the receiver. He didn't dial emergency services. He didn't dial a lawyer. He dialed a number that bypassed the switchboards, a number that rang on a desk in a 5-sided building in Arlington, Virginia. "Pentagon Command Center," a crisp voice answered. "Major Arden Price speaking." "Major," Darius said, his voice calm but cold as ice. "This is Lieutenant General Holloway, Code Black. I am being illegally detained by local law enforcement in Cedar Ridge County, a southern state. Secure materials are compromised. I need you to patch me through to General Pike's office and get the Judge Advocate General Corps on the line. We have a situation." "Yes, General. Tracing your location now. Stand by." Darius looked at the camera in the corner of the booking room. Karma, he thought, is about to arrive in a Black Hawk helicopter. Far away in the sub-basement of the Pentagon, the atmosphere in the National Military Command Center shifted from routine monitoring to crisis mode almost instantly. Major Arden Price, a sharp-eyed officer who monitored domestic logistics for high-ranking personnel, stared at his screen. The blinking red light wasn't an error. It was a beacon. "I have a code black," Rowan announced, his voice cutting through the hum of servers and quiet conversations. "Lieutenant General Holloway's beacon has been triggered. Location: Cedar Ridge County Sheriff's Department, a southern state. Status: detained." The room went silent. General Holloway wasn't just a logistics officer. He was one of the architects of the current Eastern Defense Strategy. He carried clearance levels that exceeded those of most senators. His laptop contained the keys to the kingdom regarding the movement of nuclear-capable assets along the Atlantic coast. Detained. Colonel Rowan, Major Arden Price's superior, strode over, his coffee forgotten. "By whom? Federal Bureau of Investigation? Homeland?" "Negative, sir," Rowan typed furiously. "Local law enforcement, Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Department. And sir, the transponder on his secure laptop just registered a tamper event. Someone is trying to brute force the casing." Colonel Rowan's face went pale, then red. "Get General Pike on the line. Get the Judge Advocate General Corps and get me the commander of the military police at Fort Adams. That's not far from Cedar Ridge. Tell them we have a hostage situation involving a high-value asset." "Hostage situation, sir? If a local yokel is hacking a top-secret drive," Colonel Rowan growled, "that is an act of compromising national security. Deploy the quick reaction force." Back in Cedar Ridge, the air conditioning in the station was rattling, but it did nothing to cool the rising temperature in the room. Sheriff Vernon Pike walked through the front door, shaking rain from his hat. A thunderstorm was rolling in, darkening the southern state sky. Pike was an older, imposing man with a history of heart problems and a desire to retire quietly. He ran his county with a mix of corruption and laziness, but he knew where the lines were. He saw the silver Mercedes G-Wagon, parked haphazardly in the impound lot outside, doors still open, rain beginning to soak the expensive leather. He frowned. Inside, he saw Mabel, the booking sergeant, pale and trembling behind the glass. He saw Deputy Cole Mercer, sitting at his desk with a screwdriver and a hammer trying to pry open a black reinforced hard case. And he saw the man in the holding cell. Pike stopped. He knew people. He knew authority, and the man sitting on the metal bench in the cell, staring at the wall with meditative calmness, radiated more authority than anyone Pike had ever met. "Cole," Pike said, his voice a low rumble. "What are you doing with that screwdriver?" "Boss?" Cole looked up, grinning. "Caught a big one. Drug runner driving that fancy wagon outside. Fake identification card says he's a general. I'm just trying to get into his stash box, probably full of cash or product. Pike walked over to the desk. He picked up the identification card Cole had tossed aside. He looked at the hologram. He felt the weight of the card. He looked at the name. Lieutenant General Darius Holloway. Pike's heart skipped a beat. He looked at the laptop case Cole was scratching up. It had a sticker on the bottom. Property of the United States government. Penalty for unauthorized use, 20 years of imprisonment. Cole, Pike said, his voice trembling slightly. Did you run him? Mabel did. Computer glitched. Said he was a very important protected official. Cole scoffed. Computer's wrong. Pike looked at Mabel. She shook her head frantically, mouthing the word real. Pike walked slowly to the holding cell. He grabbed the bars. Excuse me, Pike said. Darius turned his head slowly. Sheriff, I assume you are the ranking officer here. I am, Pike said. Vernon Pike. There seems to be a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding, Darius said. Your deputy arrested me without cause, assaulted me, denied me legal counsel, and is currently committing a federal felony by attempting to breach classified government property. I made a phone call a short time ago. If I were you, I would open this door. He's lying, Cole shouted from the desk. Don't let him out. He's a con artist. Pike looked at Darius. He saw the respected military academy ring. He saw the posture. Cole, Pike barked. Put the screwdriver down. But put it down, Pike roared. Suddenly the phone on Mabel's desk rang. It was a sharp, piercing ring. Mabel picked it up. Okay, then, Sheriff. She stopped. Her eyes went wide. She held the phone out to Pike. It's the governor. Pike stared at the phone. The governor of a southern state. Yes, and he's screaming. Pike took the phone. Hello, Higgins. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. What in God's name is going on down there? I just got a call from the Secretary of Defense. Do you have General Darius Holloway in a cage? Pike felt the blood leave his legs. Governor, I'm my deputy. I don't care about your deputy. The Secretary of Defense told me that if that general isn't released immediately, they are going to designate your sheriff's department as a hostile entity. Do you know what that means, Pike? It means the army is coming. Fix this now. The line went dead. Pike dropped the phone. He looked at Cole. Unlock him, Pike whispered. What? Cole asked. Unlock him now, Pike screamed, his face turning purple. And give him his damn computer. Deputy Cole moved with sullen slowness, confused and angry. He didn't understand why everyone was panicking. So, the guy had friends. So what? He was still a suspect in Cole's eyes. Cole grabbed the keys and walked to the cell. He jammed the key into the lock and twisted it. You're lucky, boy, Cole sneered as the door swung open. Sheriff's got no spine, but I'm watching you. Darius stood up. He adjusted his polo shirt. He stepped out of the cell, towering over Cole. He didn't say a word to the deputy. He walked straight to Sheriff Pike. My property, Darius said. Pike scrambled to the desk. He grabbed the laptop, the wallet, and the phone. He handed them to Darius with shaking hands. General, Pike stammered. I apologize. Deputy Mercer is young. He's overzealous. We can drop all charges. You can go. No harm done, right? Darius checked the laptop case. The lock was mangled. The plastic casing scratched deep. He looked at the phone. He looked at Pike. No harm done, Darius repeated. Sheriff, the harm is that a secured device containing national defense protocols has been tampered with by an unsecured civilian. That is a breach. The harm is that a United States general officer was kidnapped. Kidnapped? Cole scoffed. Arrested. Unlawful detention is kidnapping, Darius said. And the United States Army does not negotiate with kidnappers. Darius looked at his watch. They should be here. Who? Pike asked, sweat pouring down his face. The answer came not in words, but in sound. It started as a low thrumming, vibrating the coffee in the mugs on the desks. Then it grew, a rhythmic whomp-whompy that shook the window panes in their frames. It wasn't one helicopter. It was a formation. Then came the roar of engines on the road. "What is that?" Mabel whispered. Darius walked to the front window and looked out through the blinds. "That, ma'am, is a specialized ranger regiment and the military police from Fort Adams." Outside, the scene was apocalyptic for a small-town sheriff's department. 2 Black Hawk helicopters swooped low over the power lines, the wash from their rotors kicking up a blinding cloud of dust and rain. They hovered aggressively over the parking lot, snipers clearly visible in the side doors, their rifles trained on the sheriff's building. Simultaneously, 3 Humvees and a black tactical sport utility vehicle screeched into the parking lot, blocking the exit. Heavily armed soldiers in full tactical gear poured out of the vehicles. They didn't move like cops. They moved like predators, precise, fast, terrifying. "Oh my God," Cole whispered, his arrogance finally shattering. The front door of the station didn't open. It was kicked open. 6 soldiers stormed in, rifles raised, tactical lights sweeping the room. "Hands!" the lead soldier screamed. "Show me your hands now! Now! Now!" Sheriff Pike threw his hands in the air so fast he nearly dislocated a shoulder. Mabel dove under her desk. Deputy Cole, stunned, reached instinctively for his belt, not to draw, but out of nervous habit. "Don't do it!" a soldier roared. 2 red laser dots appeared instantly on Cole's chest. "I'm a cop!" Cole screamed, freezing. "You are a threat!" the soldier yelled in. "Get on the ground! Face down! Hands behind your head!" A tall, broad-shouldered colonel in fatigues walked in behind the soldiers. He scanned the room, ignoring the terrified local police. His eyes landed on Darius. The colonel snapped to attention and saluted. "General Holloway, Colonel Rowan, 3rd Military Police Brigade. Are you injured, sir?" Darius returned the salute slowly. "I am unharmed, Colonel, but we have a significant situation regarding the security of my equipment." Darius pointed a finger at Cole Mercer, who was now being zip-tied by 2 soldiers on the linoleum floor. "That man," Darius said, his voice ringing with finality, "attempted to access the encrypted drive after being warned of its classification. He also assaulted a superior officer." Colonel Rowan turned to Cole. The look on the colonel's face was one of pure disgust. "Sheriff," Colonel Rowan said to Pike, who was shaking against the wall, "I'm taking jurisdiction of this scene under the National Security Act. Your deputy isn't going to county jail. He's coming with us." With you?" Pike squeaked. "To where?" "Federal custody," Rowan said. "Leavenworth has a holding cell for domestic terrorists and those who compromise national security. We'll sort it out there." Cole began to thrash. "You can't do this. I'm a deputy." "Pike, tell them this is my jurisdiction." Darius walked over to Cole. He crouched down, bringing his face close to the deputy's ear. "You asked for a receipt for my car," Darius whispered. "You asked who I knew. Well, deputy, I know the people who write the laws you pretended to enforce, and you're about to learn that the badge on your chest is just a piece of tin compared to the oath I swore." "Get him out of here," Rowan ordered. As the soldiers dragged a screaming Cole Mercer out into the rain toward the waiting Humvees, Darius stood up and turned to the sheriff. "Sheriff Pike," Darius said calmly, "I suggest you call your lawyer. The Department of Justice will be conducting a full audit of your department's traffic stops and arrests for the last 10 years. If there is a pattern of profiling, and I suspect there is, you will be joining your deputy." Darius picked up his battered laptop case. "Colonel," Darius said, "I have a graduation to attend. My son Travis is becoming a paratrooper soon. I'd hate to be late." "Sir," Colonel Rowan said, "we secured your vehicle, but frankly, sir, The G-Wagon is compromised. We can't let you drive it until it's swept for bugs. We have a transport ready for you." "Very good," Darius said. He walked out of the station, flanked by the colonel. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh. The soldiers saluted as he passed. Sheriff Pike slid down the wall, sitting on the floor, listening to the sound of his career ending as the convoy roared away. The morning sun over Fort Adams was starkly different from the humid haze of earlier's roadside stop. It was crisp, golden, and illuminated the manicured parade grounds where 500 soldiers stood in perfect formation. Lieutenant General Darius Holloway sat in the distinguished guest section, his dress blues immaculate, his chest adorned with a rack of ribbons that told the story of 30 years of service. To his right sat the base commander, Major General Pembroke. To his left, an empty chair where his wife would have sat had she not passed several years prior. Darius watched the field through dark aviator sunglasses. I wasn't looking at the formation as a commander that day. He was looking for one face. In the third row, standing rigid at the position of attention, was Private First Class Travis Holloway. Travis didn't know his father had spent the night in a secure safe house, debriefing federal agents. He didn't know his father had been handcuffed and humiliated less than a short time earlier. All Travis saw was the towering figure of his father on the podium, a silent pillar of strength. "Impressive group, Darius." General Pembroke leaned over and whispered, "Your boy looks sharp." "He's a good soldier," Darius replied quietly. "Better than I was at that age." "I heard about the incident," Pembroke said, his voice dropping. "The Judge Advocate General Corps is having a field day. They're calling it Operation Clean Sweep. Apparently, they found more than just bad attitude in that sheriff's department." Darius nodded, his jaw set. "It wasn't an incident, Tom. It was a symptom, and we are the cure." As the ceremony concluded, and the order dismissed rang out, the formation broke into a sea of berets and camouflage. Darius walked down the steps, the crowd parting for him respectfully. He found Travis near the barracks. The young soldier snapped a salute, but Darius pulled him into a bear hug. For a moment, the general was just a dad. "Proud of you, son," Darius said, his voice thick. "Thanks, Dad." Travis smiled, unaware of the storm swirling around them. "Did you drive the G-Wagon? The guys were dying to see it." Darius paused. He thought of the silver sport utility vehicle currently being stripped down by forensics experts at a Federal Bureau of Investigation impound lot to ensure no tracking devices had been planted. "Not that day, son," Darius lied smoothly. "Had to take a government transport. Logistics issues." While Darius celebrated, Deputy Cole Mercer was experiencing a very different kind of mourning. He was not in the familiar, comfortable holding cell of Cedar Ridge, where he used to taunt prisoners. He was in a federal detention center in a major southern city, in solitary confinement. The cell was white, sterile, and terrifyingly silent. He had been stripped of his uniform, his badge, and his name. He was now inmate 4920. The door buzzed and clicked open. Cole jumped. He expected his lawyer. He expected Sheriff Pike to come bail him out with a slap on the wrist. Instead, two men in dark suits walked in. One was black, one was white. Neither looked like they were in the mood for jokes. "I want my lawyer," Cole croaked. His throat was dry. He hadn't been given water in hours. "You'll get your lawyer when we process you," the black agent said, pulling out a metal chair and sitting backward on it. "I'm Special Agent Bishop, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Civil Rights Division. This is Agent Navarro." "Civil rights?" Cole scoffed, trying to summon a shred of his old bravado. "I made a traffic stop. Maybe I got a little rough. That's a procedural error, not a federal case." Agent Bishop smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He tossed a file onto the small metal table. It landed with a heavy thud. "See?" That's where you're wrong, Cole. We pulled the dashcam footage, not just from that day but from the recent months. We recovered the deleted files from the server. Sheriff Pike tried to wipe earlier. Cole felt a cold spike of adrenaline in his gut. I don't know what you're talking about. We saw the stop with the college student from Florida last month, Agent Navarro said, leaning against the wall. The one where you found a baggie of meth in his back seat after you leaned in. We have video of that baggie in your palm before you reached into the car. Cole went pale. That's planting evidence. Planting evidence? Bishop said softly. That's a felony. But yesterday you kidnapped a 3-star general. Do you know what the penalty is for kidnapping a high-ranking government official during a time of elevated national alert? Cole shook his head, mute. It falls under the Patriot Act, Bishop said, dropping the bombshell. You weren't looking at unemployment, Cole. You're looking at 20 years to life in a federal supermax. You will face the same federal prison system you once assumed would hold only the people you accused. Cole began to hyperventilate. The reality of the karma was hitting him like a freight train. The badge was gone. The protection was gone. He was just a man who had bullied the wrong person. I was just following orders, Cole whispered, the oldest excuse in the book. Sheriff Pike, he told us to boost revenue. He said, target the visitors. He said, Bishop interrupted. Now we're getting somewhere. You want to talk about Pike? Because, right now, Pike is in the next room, and he's talking about you. The downfall of the Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Department wasn't a slow leak. It was a damn collapse. Before long, the story had broken. But it wasn't just a local news story. Because General Holloway had made that call to the Pentagon, the military's involvement made it national headline news. National cable news, a national news network, and another national news network were all running the same background news footage. The Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Station, surrounded by military Humvees, and the shocking image of a handcuffed Deputy Cole Mercer being led away by Army Rangers. The headline was simple and devastating. Small-town tyranny. Sheriff's Department dismantled after arresting Army General in Cedar Ridge. The atmosphere was chaotic. The Southern State Bureau of Investigation, shamed into action by the federal intervention, had raided the courthouse. They were seizing everything: ticket books, evidence lockers, hard drives, even the sheriff's personal safe. Sheriff Vernon Pike sat in an interrogation room that looked identical to the one Cole was in. But the person across from him wasn't a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent. It was the district attorney of a southern state, Camille Rowan. She was a woman known for her political ambition and her utter lack of mercy for embarrassments. Pike, Rowan said, adjusting her glasses, you have run this county like a pirate ship for 12 years. We looked at the books. You have seized over $3 million in cash and cars under civil asset forfeiture in the recent years alone, and 90% of those seized were from minority drivers. It's legal, Pike sweated, wiping his forehead with a trembling hand. State law allows seizure of assets suspected to be involved in crime. Suspected, Rowan corrected. Not proven. You never charged half these people. You just took their cars and told them it would cost more to sue you than the car was worth. That's not law enforcement, Pike. That's highway robbery. She leaned forward. But here is the twist. General Holloway didn't just sue you. He activated the Judge Advocate General Corps. The United States military is filing a formal inquiry into the disruption of national logistics. They are classifying your department as a corrupt organization that allows us to use racketeer-influenced and corrupt organization statutes. Pike gasped. Racketeering was used for the mafia. It meant they could take everything: his pension, his house, his boat, his wife's car. I want a deal, Pike pleaded. I'll give you Cole. He was a loose cannon. He did the planting. I just signed the paperwork. Cole already gave us you, Rowan said coldly. He told us about the quota system. He told us about the bonus you gave deputies for seizing luxury cars. He told us about the safe in your basement. Pike slumped in his chair. He was done. The kingdom of Cedar Ridge had fallen. Meanwhile, in a high-rise conference room in a major southern city, General Darius Holloway sat at the head of a long mahogany table. He wasn't in uniform. He was in a sharp gray suit. Flanking him were 3 military lawyers and a private civil rights attorney named Preston Vale. Across the table sat the legal team for Cedar Ridge County, looking like deer in headlights. "Gentlemen," Darius began, his voice calm but filling the room. "My lawyers tell me you are offering a settlement, $2 million and a public apology." The county lawyer nodded vigorously. "Yes, General. The county is prepared to pay immediately to avoid further litigation. We are deeply sorry for the actions of Deputy Mercer." Darius picked up a glass of water, took a sip, and set it down. "You think this is about money?" Darius asked. "I don't need your money. I have a pension and I have my integrity, neither of which your client seems to possess." "General, it's a very generous offer," the lawyer stammered. "It's hush money," Darius said. "You want me to sign a confidentiality agreement? You want this to go away so you can hire a new sheriff and go back to business as usual?" Darius stood up. He walked to the window looking out over the city. "Here is my counteroffer," Darius said, turning back to them. "I will not sue for a single penny for myself. However, I am filing a class action lawsuit on behalf of every person Deputy Mercer and Sheriff Pike have illegally stopped in the last 10 years. My team has already identified 400 victims. The county lawyers dropped their pens. 400 plaintiffs. It would bankrupt the county. Furthermore, Darius continued, I want a federal consent decree. I want the Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Department dissolved and policing duties turned over to the state police until a federally appointed oversight board, which I will help select, can rebuild the department from the ground up. General, you can't demand that, the lawyer protested. That's a takeover. I am a general in the United States Army, Darius said, his eyes hard as flint. I specialize in nation building and dismantling hostile regimes. You harbored a hostile regime on American soil. Those are my terms. You have 1 hour. Darius walked out of the room, leaving the lawyers in stunned silence. Outside in the hallway, his son Travis was waiting. He had been briefed on the extent of the situation. You really aren't taking the money, Dad? Travis asked. You could retire on that. Travis, Darius put a hand on his son's shoulder. There are things more expensive than money. Freedom is one. Dignity is another. If I took that money, I'd be selling the dignity of every person that man bullied on the side of the road. I couldn't look you in the eye if I did that. Travis smiled. You're a hard man to beat, Dad. I didn't beat them, son, Darius said, checking his watch. The truth beat them. I just made the phone call. Back in the cell, Cole Mercer sat on his bunk. The reality of his future was settling in. He would lose his house. His wife had already stopped answering his calls. He was facing federal prison time. And the worst part, he knew deep down that he deserved it. He had spent years thinking he was the wolf preying on the sheep. He never stopped to think that one day he might try to bite a lion. After the cases reached federal court, the federal courthouse in a major southern city was surrounded by a sea of media vans. The trial of United States versus Cole Mercer and United States versus Vernon Pike had become a lightning rod for national discourse on police accountability. What had started as a traffic stop on a dusty southern state road had snowballed into one of the most significant civil rights cases in the decade. Inside courtroom 4B, the air was stiflingly tense. Lieutenant General Darius Holloway sat in the front row, his posture as rigid as granite. He wore a dark charcoal suit, his military uniform retired for the day. Though his presence commanded no less respect, beside him sat his son, Travis. now a private first class with the 82nd Airborne, on leave, specifically for this moment. In the defendant's chair sat Cole Mercer. The swagger was gone. The chewing tobacco was gone. He had lost 30 pounds in pre-trial detention. His cheap suit hung loosely on his frame, and he refused to look at the gallery. He looked small. Sheriff Vernon Pike sat at the adjacent table. He looked even worse. A man whose entire identity had been stripped away, leaving a terrified, elderly shell. The presiding judge, the Honorable Silas Grant, a man known for his severe sentences and corruption cases, shuffled the papers on his bench. The silence in the room was absolute. "Mr. Mercer," Judge Grant said, his voice echoing off the mahogany walls, "you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers on 3 counts of deprivation of rights under color of law, 1 count of kidnapping, and 1 count of violation of the Espionage Act for the unauthorized tampering with classified military equipment." Cole began to weep. It was a pathetic, gasping sound. "You took an oath," the judge continued, his voice rising. "You were given a gun and a badge to protect the citizens of this county. Instead, you used them as tools of predation. You targeted General Holloway, not because he committed a crime, but because he defied your narrow, prejudiced expectation of who belongs in a luxury car. You saw a black man with power, and you tried to break him." The judge leaned forward. "But you didn't break him, Mr. Mercer. You broke yourself. And in doing so, you exposed a rot that has festered in Cedar Ridge for too long." "Your Honor, please," Cole sobbed. "I have a family." "You abused the authority entrusted to you," Judge Grant replied. "And society must be protected from anyone who repeatedly uses public power to harm innocent people." The gavel raised. "Cole Mercer, I sentence you to 22 years in federal prison to be served at you are not eligible for parole." The courtroom erupted in a low murmur. 22 years. It was a life sentence for a man of 32. Cole's knees buckled and the United States Marshals had to hold him up. The judge turned to Pike. "And you, Mr. Bay, you created the culture that allowed a man like Mercer to thrive. You chose revenue over rights. I sentence you to 10 years. Furthermore, under the racketeer-influenced and corrupt organization statutes, the court orders the immediate forfeiture of all personal assets acquired during your tenure as sheriff to pay restitution to the victims of your illegal seizures." Pike put his head on the table and closed his eyes. He was bankrupt. He was going to prison. It was over. The impact of the Holloway verdict rippled far beyond the courtroom. As part of the settlement Darius had engineered, the Cedar Ridge Sheriff's Department was officially dissolved several weeks after the trial. Jurisdiction was handed over to the Southern State Patrol until a new nonpartisan county police force could be established. The Holloway Decree, as legal scholars called it, set a precedent where a federal oversight boards could audit small-town police budgets to look for predatory ticketing practices. But the most visible change was in Cedar Ridge itself. The speed trap at Briar Creek Bridge was gone. The predatory signage was removed. The fear that had gripped the minority communities in the county began to lift. The money from the class action lawsuit, millions of dollars seized from Pike's corrupt coffers, went back to the people. Mechanics got their tools back. Families got their cars back. Students who had lost financial aid due to bogus drug charges had their records expunged and their tuition paid. Darius didn't take a dime. He donated his portion of the settlement to the Cedar Ridge Legal Defense Fund, a nonprofit set up to provide free legal counsel to those who couldn't afford it. The final drive. Long afterward, after the arrest, a silver Mercedes G-Wagon rolled down State Route 27. The car was pristine. The lock on the back had been replaced. The scratches buffed out. The interior smelled of leather and pine. Darius was driving. He was retired now. He had hung up his uniform not long before, ending a 35-year career with a ceremony at the Pentagon that brought the Secretary of defense to tears. He was a civilian now, just Darius. In the passenger seat sat Travis. He was wearing his dress blues, a new medal pinned to his chest, an Army Commendation Medal for saving a squad mate during a training accident. "You okay, Dad?" Travis asked as they approached the Briar Creek Bridge. Darius slowed the car. He looked at the spot on the shoulder where it had all happened. The gravel was still there. The oak tree was still there. But the predator was gone. "I'm fine, son," Darius said, a small, peaceful smile touching his lips. He pulled the car over just for a moment. He rolled down the window. The heat was there, the humidity, the sound of cicadas. "Why are we stopping?" Travis asked. "Just checking the perimeter," Darius said. He looked at the empty spot where Cole's cruiser used to hide. Darius reached into the center console and pulled out his phone. He looked at the background picture. It was a new one. Him and Travis fishing at the lake, laughing. He thought about the anger he had felt that day. The rage. It was gone now. It had been replaced by the quiet satisfaction of justice served. He had used his power not to destroy, but to correct. He had fought a war on a roadside in a southern state, and he had won without firing a shot. "You know," Darius said, putting the car back in gear, "Deputy Mercer asked me a question that day." "What did he ask?" "He asked me whose car this was." Darius chuckled, the sound deep and resonant. He pressed the accelerator. The G-Wagon roared to life, the twin-turbo engine singing a song of freedom. And Travis asked. Darius looked at the open road ahead, clear of traps, clear of tyrants. "And I told him," Darius said, "it's mine." They drove off toward the open horizon, leaving the shadows of Cedar Ridge behind them, driving toward a future that was a little bit brighter and a hell of a lot fairer. And that is the powerful story of how one deputy's prejudice exposed an entire corrupt system. Yet the deepest lesson is not that Cole Mercer chose the wrong person to target. It is that no one should need rank, wealth, or influence to receive dignity and fair treatment. General Darius Holloway used his authority carefully. He did not seek personal enrichment or humiliation for its own sake. He chose accountability, reform, and restitution for people who had been ignored for years. That choice reveals the difference between power and character. Power can force others to obey, but character determines whether that power protects or harms. The story also reminds us that consequences grow from repeated choices. Sheriff Pike and Deputy Mercer were not undone by one unlucky encounter. They were held responsible for a pattern they had chosen to create and defend. Forgiveness may free a person from carrying bitterness, but it does not erase responsibility. A meaningful second chance must begin with truth, remorse, and a willingness to repair whatever can still be repaired. Darius found peace because he used his experience to make the road safer for people he might never meet. Most of us will never command troops or reshape a law enforcement agency, but we still influence the lives around us. We can question our assumptions, listen before judging, and treat every stranger as someone whose story matters. Kindness does not weaken justice. It keeps justice human. Courage is not always loud, and strength is not measured by how much fear we can create. Sometimes real strength is staying calm, standing firm, and choosing a solution that gives an entire community room to heal. What do you think about Darius's final decision? Was rebuilding the system and compensating its victims the right response, or would you have chosen differently? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories of hard karma and justice served cold, make sure you subscribe and ring the notification bell. You don't want to miss what we have coming next. Stay safe, know your rights, and I'll see you in the next one.